Welcome back, Owen. So this time we're going to talk about the new assessment processes that we're going through and the changes that have been implemented. I know we've done a session on foundation apprenticeships, but this one is to try and generalise and preempt where we're going with the new developments. And I guess to start off with, we've talked before, but we've got the change of terminology. Where we are today, we're currently filming this. We're still waiting for the off-call consultation to be finished. We're still waiting for the general requirements document from Skills England to come out. So there's potentially changes that are still going to take place. And we've been at a situation where we've been waiting for the 5 shortened apprenticeships to come out, data tech being one of those. And there's still no movement, still not come out. So what we're talking about and what we've been going through with our customers could change with some of those additions as they come down later in the road. So where we currently are and our current thinking and our current practices that we're putting in place, if we can focus on them today, we can obviously adjust this as we go down the road. So initial thoughts on the new assessment practices.
I need to stop saying exciting, but for me, if you're looking at designing assessments, there's some definite potential and possibilities there. I think if people are focusing on LinkedIn and just watching the commentary on LinkedIn, they'd think frameworks were coming back and everything's going to change. There is some really definitive guidance and definitive rules and information that's hidden beneath the headlines in the documentation, but it is giving that flexibility. You know, customers and providers and employers have said, well, actually, we want some testing early. Why hold people back if they can progress even faster, if we're going to run accelerated programs? So that's there also. But again, as we always say, with great flexibility comes great responsibility. So when you're designing those curriculum, when we're designing the assessments, there are some challenges, but it is definitely glass half full than half empty. It's what we've been asking for in the industry, and now we get a chance to deliver.
For me, I think it's been enlightening that Skills England do want to have conversations with us. Likewise with Ofqual. I mean, the amount of sessions that we've all been on in the last few months, I think there's never been as much engagement with the organisation's regulatory bodies as we've had at this point. So that bit for me has been really good as well, that everybody seems as passionate to get it right, and based on what we just said earlier, that things haven't come out in the market yet, means that people want them to be right before they're released as opposed to rush something through, which I think we've taken that policy anyway internally, that we want to make sure ours is right, and it's not necessarily being first to market, it's about being right in the marketplace and getting it right. So again, we're back to this point that under the new system, registrations for these apprentices have to be up front, and I think the engagement we're having currently with our customers and the engagement we've got with employers at the moment demonstrates that there is an appetite for this, as you've said. They want the on-programme assessment, but actually they're still pretty concerned over a few things. How does that work? At what are the timescales? But I think the other one that comes in there is behaviours. So how is that going to be adopted? What's our responsibility? What's their responsibility? And that still hasn't been, although they say we're validating and they're creating it, that still hasn't been defined as how that will work either side yet, has it?
No, and I think behaviours are important, and we're looking in this age of scalability, technology, AI, and actually if you look at most commentators and even the latest McKinsey report, it's the human element that's the most important. So those behaviours, those soft skills are vitally important, because what's the point of having somebody who can engage with technology, especially in our field, but they can't talk and they can't work with stakeholders, customers, colleagues. So those behavioural elements, and you know that again, I think there's some really kind of creative ways employers can embed those, looking at their values, looking at their company culture, and then how they actually hard code that in effect into their apprenticeship offering. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to trialing a few of our ideas that we've got for how employers can kind of embed those into what they're doing in the workplace.
And go back to that bit, the collaboration, but the registration up front. I think that is really important on that point of embedding things into employers, because we have the opportunity to work with them and agree that if that's how they're going to implement that, we would recognise that within our practices. So I think that conversation early on is really, really important now.
Yeah, I think one of the voices that I haven't seen much of and heard much of is the apprentice voice. So again, as an apprentice goes through their programme, if they had to wait till their end to talk to their awarding organisation, they can't have that light bulb moment, and actually enabling them to have that light bulb moment really early on in their apprenticeship. Obviously, if they're registered, they can engage with us through their provider. They can actually understand what their qualification is about, how it works, what are their requirements, and actually it's usually the simple questions that we answer. And we can do so on the benefit of our experience in working with apprentices for a number of years now, in actually just making it very, very transparent. It's a transparent process. It's based, our role is to assess their competence, assess their knowledge, assess their skills, and it should be absolutely related to the work they're doing in the workplace. And I think that's a little bit that gets lost. And I think that apprentice voice is going to be important, because they're the ones who are going to be going through these are new style apprenticeships.
But I think in a different, not just their voice but it's the back to this point of understanding. They want to go on a journey that they know what they're expected to achieve at the end, and I think we all know, based on what's been said, that different AOs can have a different approach.
Yep.
And how they interpret or dissect the assessment outcomes and what assessment methods they put in there if they're not predetermined in the assessment plan. So I think that engagement with the apprentice at the beginning is really key on what they need to do at what stage, what that involves for them, and not come across surprises as they go through the 8 months, 12 months, whatever the duration of the programme.
I think one of the things I always liken it to, if you've got an engineer who's doing something sort of half doing the job, are you going to get on that plane? So you want to know, an apprentice should want to know that the qualification they're doing is robust, it's quality first. There is the design that's actually gone into it, and actually enabling them to understand that this is, in some cases, will be about them stretching their opportunities, making sure they've got exposure to the right areas within the business. I think, again, that then triples up when you're working with employers and the providers, where you actually say that's the whole point of apprenticeships. It is the gaining of significant additional knowledge, significant additional skills. So again, I think from top to tail through providers right up to my friends in the account management, BDM, strategic directors that are selling these apprenticeships into their corporate clients, is understanding there are some reasons why that they're supposed to have exposure to certain areas within the workplace. And I think apprentices understanding that you don't want something that is a light touch. If you want a robust qualification, then you need to actually understand what is part of your apprenticeship, what you're expected to achieve. And I think we can only really have those insightful conversations when they are registered early on.
And it brings us back to the point as well about the providers and the curriculum that we've talked about before, because I think that engagement and understanding the curriculum that is mapped correctly to how, one, they're going to deliver on programme, if you like, and the stages that can do that might link to on programme assessment, but also that it is mapped correctly to those assessment outcomes is crucial now.
Oh, absolutely. But I think it enables them in their curriculum as well. We kind of, through COVID, obviously the heavy reliance on sort of online learning portals. I don't expect them to go anywhere, but there can be a real kind of new way of looking at that. How providers design their programs. Are they designing them in blocks? Are they doing lots of upfront learning? Are they having more discrete learning that fits in with their curriculum? and the assessment can flow along with that to make sure they're tested at the right time.
And for us, I guess that's the difficulty. So we sit here scratching our heads, not that there's much for us to scratch in hair, but, you know, we sit here time and time again now going, well, actually, one employer or one industry may want an assessment in this shape and form. Another may want it in a different guise. So that's the dilemma we've got on making sure that they're comparable if we're changing things, and how we make sure that they get the same experience at the end of the day for us. But we need to manage that assessment process internally.
Yeah, it's all part of that design process. You know, what are the objectives, taking it through our kind of, you know, what we know is a quality assured process, and making sure we're collaborating then with providers, with organisations to understand their requirements as well from an assessment point of view. I think it's one of the things as well when you look at how you're testing it, making sure there's no bias included in that. It's again to make sure it's deliverable and it's providing that best experience for the apprentice. Are they being tested in a way that they recognise and helps them, you know, showcase their skills and knowledge in the best way?
And go back to the employers, because I think it's important in terms of what they do for the apprentice and for the training provider. But we're now going to this on-programme assessment stage as well, and the opportunity to do it during a programme. And one of the things that the employers have always said is the amount of time someone's taken out of the work environment to engage in that assessment practice. So it needs to be realistic. It needs to be fit for purpose and not disruptive to the employer's way of working as well. And how that's going to be timed during their apprenticeship is down to the provider to also engage in. But I think making sure that that assessment is realistic and fit for purpose and not disruptive to the employer is massive.
Oh, absolutely huge. And I think it's probably going to have an increased focus on employers in selecting their provider, for one. You know, there's a number of providers out there that they could be working with. It's probably going to put more focus on the employer wanting to understand what the curriculum or what the delivery model is. I think for those employers have come a long way. I remember when we were first designing kind of assessments in the move from frameworks to the first version of the standards, and we're kind of going through full circle again. But people understanding that this should be something that's added into your organisation, not added on. So it's part of their job. It's training to enhance their skill set. And those employers who do that really well, I've noticed over the years, really, really do focus in on what's being delivered, how it's being delivered, how they can input into that delivery, whether it's the tech stack that's being delivered. And then actually the knock-on effect is how are you assessing that?
I mean, they're an interesting time, we know that.
Yeah.
And I guess every time that we have a conversation with another provider or another employer, it's just another thought process we have to go through, because each sector wants something different. I guess the one of the big concerns that I have in how we manage those relationships is that we could end up with 3 or 4 different assessment methods per standard if we go down and desire to follow everyone's wishes, which could make things very, very complicated. So I think we still have to be strong as an AO to say to people, actually, this is the methodology. You can't go outside these boundaries. Yep. And I think that's going to be hard for some people to hear at times. Yeah,
I think just because you can do it doesn't mean say you should. So comparability is going to be the key word. And that's why with that kind of structured design process, you've got to look at what are those assessment outcomes? What are you actually measuring? And can you measure that in the same way, even if you have a slightly different synoptic test for an individual? And if the answer is no, and it isn't comparable, then it may not be doable. So it's one of the things I think, like everyone, you know, we don't stop learning as we go through. You know, it's incumbent on us as well. I think Skills England have been quite clear on this. I think Ofqual have been also quite clear on this. They're looking for potential innovation. They're looking for ways you can deliver high quality assessments which are responsive to the industry need. And for that, it isn't just he who shouts or she who shouts loudest. It's actually how do you put it through that design process and deliver comparable, valid outcomes.
And finally, before we finish on this, we're doing a different session, separate session on centres doing marking, but they are now permitted or under the guidance now, and subject to working with us, able to mark. We still have to do 40% and over, but there is the opportunity that they can do some marking, and I think that adds to the risk. I think we'll talk about it in a bit more detail. There is the issue that some centres aren't set up to do that now. Yep. But if there's one area, I guess, at the moment that concerns me is how that's managed and how we make sure it's right without putting too much pressure and expectancy on those training providers.
Yeah, like I say, if I believed everything I'd heard, I'd be looking for kind of assessments and frameworks to come straight back. But in reality, the same regulations are still there. I think there's a bit of a dichotomy. So there's, as you say, have you got the skilled individuals in a training provider who are independent of the training and the delivery to actually undertake those assessments? Can they do so in the quality that we would demand when we kind of make sure we authenticate their delivery methods as you would as a centre? But I also think that independence is a key word if you're working with employers, because one of the things employers have said is they value the independence of assessment. And again, some people can take a different view of that and actually say, do you know what, that's the strength of our programme. We will put that in front of anybody and it can be independently assessed. So I think there's a lot of choices that people can make, but it's the regulation hasn't gone anywhere. It's still, we're still working in an off-call regulated environment, and those requirements will literally pass down through to the centres. So that is one of the biggest challenges. Have you got the right staff? Are they adequately skilled? Can you demonstrate that internal independence?
And again, we talk about this all the time, and that independence is really, really key. And I guess we come back to where we started. We're still waiting for the off-call consultation to finish and what that will look like for us. And anything that we do deliver at the moment, whilst that consultation isn't finished, will be under our current regulatory framework. And then we may have to make changes, whatever comes out as the outcomes of that consultation. So that could change the way we work as well, and the way we have to work with partners. So there's a lot still to be ironed out on that. We'll go into more detail about the centres and Mark in a separate session. But appreciate your time again,
no worries.
Owen, and we'll catch up with everybody soon. Thank you.